God entered English in the neuter. Fun fact for you. Shout out to the person in my last video who was talking about the etymology of God and mentioned that it might be related to the phrase to pour a drink. And that sent me down this big rabbit hole of research and ultimately bumped this word up on my list of words that I would like to talk about. I'm Anika Rose, and here is another episode of The Origin of Words. The origin of God. So, the etymology and the history of the word God in English is really interesting because there's so many questions surrounding it. I do want to answer the question linguistically and etymologically. Where did God come from? And where did the gender of God come from? Linguistically speaking, and why? Why do we have this word God in English? Because I personally think there could have been many other words for God in English, just like any word in English, honestly. But I think some other words make more sense in my mind for the root for the word for God. So much of how our words have evolved have been because of people trying to differentiate themselves. And it's the same case for the word for God. It was mainly Christians trying to differentiate from pagans and differentiate their term for God and the way they addressed God. The word comes from Old English God, pretty similar, and Proto-Germanic Guthon. This Proto-Germanic word is also the source for the words for God in Dutch and German. And like basically every word, it is uncertain precisely where Guthon comes from. There are two schools of thought. One is that the word Guthon comes from Proto-Indo European stem gu, which is what I mentioned in my God Be With Ye video. Gu has the idea of to call or to invoke, and we call or invoke God. So that could be how gu came to mean God centuries and millennia later. Another theory, and the theory that this commenter mentioned in my video, Goodbye, was that God could have evolved from the Proto-Indo European stem gu, which means to pour a libation. This meaning of this word gu was directly passed down to the Dutch word, which still means to pour in Dutch today. As I said in my Goodbye video, God and good are not etymologically related in the least, and it is only fairly recently that God and good have been associated together. Gods historically and in paganism weren't necessarily good, and even historically the word good wasn't used to refer to moral or ethical goodness. Now, the Proto-Indo-Europeans and the Proto-Germanics had a word for God, and the Proto-Germanics used the word ansus, which I think could have evolved into the word God in English, but it was never used to refer to the Christian God. It was only used for specific pagan gods by the Proto-Germanics. Also, the etymology for the word deus and God in the Romance languages, as well as other languages, and also the root for a bunch of words in English, is the Proto-Indo European deu, or deos, and deu comes from the meaning of it is to shine, and that harkens back to sun gods and worshiping the sun and this idea of sovereignty and power of the sun, which is beautiful. So this word, this root deu, is the root of words for God, for deus in Latin, deva in Sanskrit means God. The Russian word for day, den, comes from this root, as well as Old Persian deva, which means demon or evil god. Deu is the source of so many words in English. Here are a few. It's the source for the gods Jupiter or Zeus. It's the source for Tuesday, circadian, deism, adieu, dial, diary, Diana, journal, dismal, diva, Jove, jovial, Julia, July, meridian, psychedelic. It's a really, really neat root to know. We could do a whole video talking about this root. In my opinion, a better use or a better word for God in English that makes more sense in my mind would have been deu, especially since the Romance languages use that, or even ansus. since that's literally what our ancestors in language used for the word God. Of course, there is that religious influence that influenced our language. More on that later. The word God entered English when English still had grammatical gender. So when God originally entered the English language, it entered in the neuter, not the masculine, not the feminine, the neuter. And the Abrahamic religions maintain that God has no gender. He is genderless, but we do use masculine pronouns when referring to him. This is largely because these Abrahamic religions want to show personal relationship. This was making a difference between the pagan relationship with their gods and these religions' relationship with God that was supposed to be personal. Another reason why God is masculine in Christianity and in Islam is Hebrew. Actually, so in Christianity, Hebrew only has two genders. It has masculine and feminine. So typically in these languages, a noun that refers to someone is masculine unless it's feminine. So masculine refers to neuter and masculine things. It's the same thing with Arabic. The default is masculine. There's only masculine and feminine, and the default is masculine. When translators were translating the Bible, they saw the masculine pronouns and translated it into the masculine pronoun in English. Obviously, there's more things at play there, why God turned out to be masculine, turned out to have he pronouns, but it's interesting how even in some of the early Bibles, in the Gothic Bible, God had a neuter ending, and the adjective going with it had a masculine ending. We have that. Also important to realize that in languages with grammatical gender, especially for native English speakers like myself, languages that have grammatical gender, it's not like a French person is looking at a chair and thinking, oh, that's similar to a woman. Although there are studies, but that's a different topic. But in general, it's not as intense. When English speakers try to learn other languages, we tend to put too much focus on that gender as like a woman and a man. In reality, it's not the case. A lot of languages that have gendered words and gendered just neutral nouns are trying to de-genderize their language. Hebrew, I saw this website, has this whole website about it. And then German, French, many other languages are talking about de-gendering their language. That's a different discussion. Also, because of Christianity, we started capitalizing the word God and capitalizing the pronoun we use for him. This was partly out of respect and also to differentiate from the pagans. The first written use of God was in the 6th century in the Code Argentus, which is one of the earliest translations of the Bible. Let me know how this influences how you think about the word God, if it changed anything, what you would add to it. Also, do you think, this is such a hypothetical question, but do you think that the word God should have evolved from a different root? I don't know if this is, but do you think it logically makes sense? Like, why did we get this word for God? And why did the Romance languages get deus sort of words for God? Why do we have to pour a libation turn into God? I would argue that our word for God is probably, well, they're all pagan. All of our words for God in Proto-Indo European languages originate in paganism, in the original gods. But it's also an interesting discussion to see how much religion has influenced the terms we use today. I would love if you followed me on Instagram. I started an account just for this YouTube channel. I post more often and I also give updates, so I know this video is late and I talked about it on my Instagram. I also post some of the visuals from my YouTube videos on there. I'm also thinking about starting a private Facebook group for fans of the channel, where we can discuss, we can talk about topics you would like to hear from me. You can suggest things. If you really want to come on the channel, maybe we could arrange that too. I haven't started the Facebook group yet, but I will definitely announce it on my Instagram. I'd also love it if you liked and subscribed. Obviously, I love it so much. Bye.